Welcome to the Hen House Podcast, where mothers rise together in authentic conversation and sacred connection. With your hosts, Chantal Breanne and Andrea Sjoeberg. It's time to jump into the Hen House. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Hen House Podcast. We are so happy to have you listening today. And today we're going to talk about slowing down and enjoying motherhood, which is easier said than done.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah, definitely. I know we were saying just before hopping on, we're like, we gotta shake this off a little bit because we're both running in just like a little frazzled with kind of juggling everything that comes up in a day and
Right. Yeah.
but here we are.
Take some deep breaths.
Right? We're here, we're present, we made it.
Yeah, and it's funny that today of all days, like we're both a little bit frazzled because this topic is so important, but it's also something I really do struggle with is actually slowing down and enjoying motherhood. And I was thinking just before we hopped on, I was thinking that, and I was also thinking that one of the ways that would combat a lot of like the issues or stresses that I have with motherhood would probably be just that, slowing down to enjoy it.
Right, right. And it's this balance. And I was talking about it last night. Like, how do we find the balance of everything that needs to get done and being productive and then just also just having fun, because it's so hard to rush kids all the time. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm like, it's stressful for me, it's stressful for her. Like, even in a diaper change or something, it's like she's like rolling over and crawling off and doing her thing. And it's like, I mean, sometimes it takes us like a half hour to change one diaper, which is
Right.
ridiculous. And it's like, there's all these other things. And I'm going like, I could get really frustrated and be like, no, you're going to stay here and we're going to do this. And I don't care if everyone screams and cries. And we're like so stressed out. I want to go binge watch Friends right afterwards. Now, like, soothing me. No.
Right. No, seriously, sometimes that's what it takes.
I'm like, or what if I just let her, assuming it's not a massively poopy diaper, what if
Yeah.
I just let her roll and crawl and we do it like bit by bit, and it takes, 30 minutes, but it's less stressful. I'm going, and sometimes you don't have that opportunity because
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, we have to be somewhere. You can't be an hour late for everything. But and sometimes I'm like, what am I rushing for?
Yeah.
Like, what am I rushing for? Like, isn't it more fun if I'm just present with her and say, you know what? She's just going to do what she wants to do right now. And what if I just sit down and watch her,
Yeah.
and,
That's awesome. I love that. I love that approach. Um, I'm still struggling with that. And I think that I could have saved myself a lot of grief when Chanel, like my daughter, was first born, in trying to force like a schedule or a routine that was not necessary. Because it's like, really, there's really wasn't a need. And I think I created a lot of extra stress, like bedtime at this time, nap time at this time, because she was never one of those babies that napped for more than 30 minutes.
okay. Oh, really short.
Yeah, she was a
Yeah.
30-minute napper and she would nap throughout the day. So like those, when you look up like a baby's sleep schedule, she never followed it. She was always off what they said developmentally she would do. Like she just even, yeah. So it was one of those things that it's like, I think it goes back to our episode on like intuitive. We did an
Mhm.
episode on intuitive
Yeah. In season
parenting.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, that's one of those situations where if your baby's not, or your child's not really a routine type of baby, maybe it's better to just follow their lead rather than trying
Right.
to force it.
Right. Right. And I think in enjoying motherhood and in that slowing down process is like recognizing that they're this little autonomous being
Yeah.
and their needs and your needs sometimes differ,
Yes. Yeah.
and trying to find that balance and kind of saying, okay, like I don't control everything. Like maybe
Right.
instead of having an epic struggle,
Right.
what if I just go with the flow?
Yeah.
Like, how about she makes the rules right now and I say, okay, you're in charge. You're in charge. I'm just going to sit here
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm not winning this battle, like it's just like you are tiny and little, but you are winning. so, so and I
Yeah.
have found that sometimes like especially if I get really tired, like at bedtime or something, and I'm like,
Mhm.
go to sleep. I want you to go to sleep. And she's like Tasmanian devil on turbo speed, like getting out all the last of her energy. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, you seemed a little sleepy, but we tried for 10 minutes. This isn't working. So
Right.
rather than and a few times I've gotten so frustrated, like, why aren't you sleeping? Like, just go to
Right.
sleep. You were
Yeah.
tired. Why aren't you tired now? Like, did I give you Red Bull in a boob or what? What happened?
Yeah.
And then but if I can step out of my frustration and go, you know what? Like instead of fighting, I know I'm tired and this is really about me not getting what I want.
Right. Yeah.
Like right now, this is about me not getting what I want.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm going like if there's no specific reason why something has to happen really quickly or right then, I'm going maybe it's less stressful for all of us if I say, I know I'm tired. It's okay. You're not getting what you need. You will probably within a half hour. Let's get up. Let's go to the other room. Let's have a change of
Right.
scenery. And
Yeah.
sometimes 20 minutes later, she'll be sleeping. Or maybe
Yeah.
it's 45 minutes later. But
Right.
usually the nap still comes for all of us. It's just, and and it's like an exercise in my own brain though, of like, breathe, it's okay.
Yeah. A lot of self-talk.
Like you are
Parenting yourself.
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to be upset. Everything's okay.
Yes.
And let's move in a different direction.
Yeah. That's and I love that because there's so many times when I've like tried to force it and I end up being in their room trying bedtime for like an hour and a half. Whereas had I just realized after 10 minutes, like it's not time, let's go play or let's go do something else and let's come back and try
Yeah.
again. I've started doing that now, but I've probably spent way too many nights trying to force it when it just wasn't going to happen. Like,
Right. Right. And and it's really a challenge too, because I've been basically incapable of having like a super structured bedtime.
mhm.
It's just I haven't been able to do that. But you
Right.
get a lot from other people too. Like you need to have a structured bedtime. Like babies do good on a
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah,
People like
yeah.
you need a schedule. And I'm going, well, we have a very loose schedule.
Right. Yeah,
We
yeah.
wake up within this hour, we go to sleep within this hour, and we
Right.
nap within these 2-ish hours,
Yeah.
mostly.
I think that's a good approach. And like I tell that to a lot of clients who have new babies too, because I actually heard of someone whose their spouse's job was forcing them to put their baby on a schedule.
Okay.
Because they were like, "We need you to be rested for work, so you have to follow this, like, very specific sleep training schedule, eating, feeding," and, like
Hmm.
the mom was kind of like, "This is causing me more stress, like, we had it figured out, we had a loose schedule, and now this is just adding so much stress," and I was just like, "Then just don't do it," like, they're
Right.
like,
Right.
"You
And I
don't
think so.
have to do it."
But and I think that's something like to be our own inner, like
Yeah,
if it's not working, don't do it. If it's not working, maybe try something new.
right, yeah,
Like it
exactly.
doesn't have to look a certain way, and it's okay to change. And eventually many needs will be met. It just may not be met exactly when
Right.
each person wants everything per se.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I got a floor bed with my kids. Because I would be trying to put them both to bed at the same time, and I would just lie there and let them, you know, play around, read books, run around the room, and eventually when they were tired, they would come down and lie with me and fall asleep. But yeah, I never really was able to like follow a super strict schedule or even be one of those parents who's like, all right, good night, lights out, and leaving the room. Like, no,
Right, right,
I have to lie with them even to this day. I have to take turns lying with them. And it's like,
right. Well, I remember that though as a kid too. It's like,
yeah,
oh, like come snuggle. Like
yeah.
I shared a room with my sister for a while, but we would be like to my mom or my dad, we'd be like, oh, come snuggle with us.
Oh,
Oh, can you
yeah,
rub my back? Oh,
yeah, yeah,
can you stroke my head a little bit? Like,
yeah,
can you tell me a story?
yeah,
Like, tell me a story of when you were little. And like that was what we liked to do at bedtime.
yeah,
And and I think sometimes it's like there can be such beautiful moments
yeah.
as a parent
Mhm.
if you can kind of like set your highly type A productive little inner self and just be like, it's okay. You know what? Right now, let's tell a story. Let's rub their back
Yeah.
and let's just go with it. And it's all okay.
And it's almost like giving yourself permission to let go in those moments.
Right? Right? And I think
Yeah.
it's not always just about like time with kids either. Like I think that mothers are under immense pressure.
Yeah.
Like and like again, I've said this before, like there's like watching my sisters. Now my sisters were, I would also argue, both pretty stressed during large parts of their
Hmm.
early especially motherhood journey.
Yeah.
And but like they got so much done. Like their house was clean and
Right.
organized and tidy and put together. Depending on the day, but
Yeah.
let's just say relative to mine. And like they had dinner on the table every night and
Yeah.
they baked homemade bread
Right.
and
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
they like gardened
Yeah.
and took care of pets and
It's a lot.
like had appointments and play dates.
Yeah.
Like had makeup on when they left the
Right.
house.
Yeah.
and and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but um because sometimes my life looks put together too, and occasionally for brief
Yeah.
moments in time it is, but like
I
I'm
think
not
your life's pretty put together.
I'm not living in total chaos, and I don't make dinner every night.
Neither do I. There's no way. That went out the window a long time ago.
Like it's just I don't. I'm like sometimes I can help prep a little bit of
Yeah.
stuff. I
Right.
have occasionally managed like 15 minutes to clean something
Yeah.
if she's really happy, or I can put her in baby jail, which for a while she found highly entertaining because there were toys in there. And currently she does not.
Didn't
She
last long. Yeah.
the entertainment lasted about 5 days and then she's like, okay, I hate this thing.
I want out.
So so much for that. So but it's just I think that that's kind of the element of allowing ourselves to slow down also on the to-do list and be like, you know what? It's okay if some things don't get done because someone's having a need right now. And let me not get really angry or upset or really stressed or overwhelmed because there's a basic need that's coming up. Because really, all it's doing is now I'm having a conflict of my to do list and this need that's coming up. And I think to also be compassionate with ourselves and say, okay, some
Mhm.
things, some days simply won't get done.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Mhm.
Like, and I honestly probably struggle with that more than with some of the other stuff of going like, I have all these things that I want to do and I feel like are mission critical for me, like
Yeah.
that I want to contribute to the world and that I want to
Right.
accomplish, and
Yeah.
like passion projects, um and I'm going, you know what? Sometimes you can't do everything all at one time, and this may not be the season for doing
Right.
certifications and additional trainings. And you know, like like I had wanted to finish writing my book by
Mhm.
the end of this year. And just this week, I kind of sat with myself and said, you know what? I am putting way too much pressure on myself. I'm
Yeah.
stressing my family out in
Mhm.
trying to like make this happen so quickly. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, you know what? Like, I have a few too many things on the go.
Yeah.
And I can't balance it all. So I have to kind of pick for right now what I want to prioritize, because otherwise it's not good for me and it's not good for anyone else. And
Yeah.
so I said, okay, let me take the deadline off of myself, because it's not like there's a publisher. I'm going to self-publish. So I'm the
Right.
only person like,
Yeah.
you know, getting at me about it. It's not like
Mm.
and so I'm going like, yes, I think it's still important to finish.
Mhm.
However, I'm like, when I started that, which was actually a few years ago, maybe, well, before I was pregnant, maybe 2 years ago, two
Yeah.
and a half years ago, something like that. But again, it's like we weren't doing the podcast at that point. I didn't have a baby at that point.
Right. A lot different. Yeah.
and and so I'm going, okay, you know what? I think I need to narrow my focus ever so slightly for right now and say, okay, there's a couple projects. I will finish them.
Yeah.
And it's okay that I won't finish them right now.
Yeah.
And that's been something this week for me of like, okay, I'm going to, like, instead of trying to add more, let me focus and say, okay, what's really the most important right now for our short term and long term goals? And
Right.
what do I feel most strongly about right now?
Yeah.
Because there will become time for everything. Because at some point, she will nap on her own
Right.
during
Yeah.
the day and won't need me there with her in order to stay asleep for more than like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm going, at some point she will nap on her own, or she'll have a little activity here or there, or,
Yeah.
um, right. Or like, like there's going to come a point in time, both happy and sad, where she'll need me a little bit less and there'll
Right.
be more time for more projects.
Yeah.
And I don't want to squander like the precious time now either, being
Yeah.
hard on myself about not getting things done, and
Right.
then just causing her a certain amount of stress by not being as present. So, and I've
Exactly.
really had to sit down with myself this week and go, okay, like we're going to have a little self heart to heart. Here's Andrea and here's Andrea. No.
It's funny that this topic is so relevant because I actually was having a lot of like negative emotions and feelings about this very topic. And I actually was in therapy for like a short time frame because it was so difficult for me to like compartmentalize all the things, financial, future, this,
Mhm.
that, so many things that I was having difficulty like being present with my kids at the moment. And it's like, what is the, and then you look back when they're asleep and you're like, oh, I miss them. And, that looked so fun. Why didn't I enjoy it? Why was I stressing
Right.
about money? And, 3 years from now, it looks so fun. And so it's so funny because it's like we have all these things that we want to do. And it's like, we think, at least for me, I felt like I'm not allowed. You don't have, it all figured out. Like you don't have, your career figured out or your relationship or this. So it's like you don't have permission to just be a mom and enjoy. that was what I was telling myself. So I had to like rework that in therapy.
Mhm.
And my therapist actually said, and this I thought was so helpful. She's like, you're allowed to put like finances, career, relationship, put it in a box and like set it aside and be present with your kids. Like you're allowed to do that. And I was like, okay, I am allowed to do that. And like I really had to work for it because it was so hard. And I've gotten better, but it's still
Mhm.
a struggle, you know? And it's interesting because it's like, who tells us we don't have permission? Like, where is that thought coming from? You know what I mean? Like, that we
Right,
have
right,
permission to just enjoy.
right. I mean, it's like, who knows the crazy thoughts that we have in our head and where they
Right.
came from. And
Yeah.
let's not blame our parents for everything, because it's like, it's the other thing. I'm like, okay, Andrea, don't blame your parents for everything, because, oh my God, I don't want my daughter to blame me for everything.
Yes. I know. It's like, oh, suddenly it changes.
I'm
Yeah.
like, some of it's just on me,
Yeah.
and I think it depends a little bit on like who we are as people. I think some of us are more sensitive than others. Some of us are more easily influenced. Some of us are more easily falling into comparison.
Right.
And
Yeah.
some days are
Worse than
easier than
others.
others. Like
Yeah.
yesterday, I felt really judged over everything.
Yeah.
Like I was doing everything wrong. And it was like, and I don't think anyone was judging me. People were just talking or saying,
Right.
hey, I noticed this. Or someone said, like, you know, do you give her a plate and a fork and whatever and let herself eat? And I'm going, well, don't currently have a high chair. So usually she just kind of baby birds it while we're on the move. And
Right.
I sit and she runs and plays and then comes back and I give her a little bite
Yeah.
and, and then, and we kind of do it like that. Right. And I think they were just curious. It was her, grandfather on my husband's side.
Okay. Yeah.
And he doesn't know us that well because he lives in Sweden. Um, and I was like, I think he's just being curious, but I took it as like, oh my God, he's saying that I'm doing it wrong. And it was just one of those days, and I'm kind of like, wow, I am like really falling into comparison, like everyone's doing it better than me, and I'm
Yeah.
doing everything wrong, and I'm feeling so overly sensitive
Hmm.
and like not very resilient.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just kind of one of those days, and it made it much harder to just enjoy the day because every little thing, my little inner critic was like, no, 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 no. And, and just like feeling judged by everyone. And I'm going, I know not everyone is judging me. Like,
Right.
this is me making this up in my own being.
Yeah.
And some days I'm fine and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it my way. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And other days are just
More
a
difficult.
little, and I'm going, where does that come from? I don't quite know. Was it because I was really tired?
Yeah.
It,
It's interesting because like I'm actually in one of my courses that I'm taking right now, learning about like the self-judge and the victim that is
Mhm.
in our mind and like how the thoughts that we tell ourselves affect our mood. And then and it's so interesting because I've been recognizing my own self-judge. Um,
Yeah.
Similar to yours, like someone might make a little comment and then I will assume the worst and then I'll not only that I'll add to it and I'll be like, well, they're right. And and it'll just get worse and worse. And so um I've been working on trying to stop that because I can be like my own worst critic, like
Yeah.
especially when it comes to motherhood. And I don't know, I don't feel like I was like that in other areas. I feel like once I became a mom, it just all came like it was like the floodgates opened and like all the judgment, all the criticism, all the comparison, like just like whoo, swooped in and like
Right.
having to battle these thoughts on a
Yeah.
daily
And I think
basis.
some of it too is like we've talked about before. It's like, I'm like almost wanting to swear here, but you don't want to mess it up.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. The
you don't
stakes
want
are
to, you
high.
don't want to, like, you don't want to mess it up. Like, this is so important. Like, this is someone's
Yeah.
beautiful little life on the
Right.
line, and it's a remarkable amount of responsibility. And
Right.
so there's this balance. Again, it's the word balance keeps coming out of my mouth today, but of like, I get frustrated with people when they say, "Oh, well, just well, whatever." Like, usually about TV, because I've really been trying to not watch a lot of TV with her, which means I have to change my habit and not watch less.
Right. Yeah.
And same with, I don't want her having processed sugar, which means I don't get processed sugar.
Right.
And those are things that are hard for me because I didn't realize perhaps quite how much I enjoyed them or slightly relied on them, or I didn't
Mhm.
realize like how habitual they had become for me.
Right. Yeah.
And so in trying to do better, and I've not been perfect, but well,
Right.
she's not had any processed sugar, but has she been exposed to some television? Definitely yes. And especially early on, because that kind of changed things too. Like, I binge watched all of Downton Abbey early on
Yeah.
because I was like, okay, she's sleeping. I can't even get off the couch hardly by myself.
Right.
And so I was like, I have to do something. And I mean, I read a lot too, but it was
Yeah.
also kind of like I needed a little anyway. So I'm like, well, that kind of went out the window a bit. But as she's gotten older, I've really tried to be cognizant of it.
Right.
But what
Yeah.
was my point? So people will say, oh, like, it just doesn't matter. Like, we did this and turned out fine, and this was fine.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, I get what they're saying, because I think what they're trying to say is it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay if you don't always live up to your most highest
Vision.
vision for yourself and your parenthood journey, because no one ever will.
Yeah.
So and I think that's what they're trying to say, which is good. And so it's like, how do you find the balance? Because not everything that happened was okay. Not everything was fine.
Yeah.
I'm going, there's certain things in the evolution of, and I think that's some of the like rising individually and collectively, that there's this
Right.
evolution of thought. There's new ideas that come out and say, sure, what has happened in generations previous is fine.
Right.
However, now we're going for good, or we're going for great,
Yeah.
because I'm seeing something and I have the capacity to do a little bit better
Right. And I
here.
think it's important as humans to, like, say someone is doing something for themselves that they believe is benefiting their child, and maybe instead of, say, if you're not doing your best in that area, instead of trying to criticize or like bring them down a peg down to your level, not to say down to your level, but like to try and like criticize them,
Yeah.
just honor what they're doing, and you know like see it for what it is, that it's amazing that you're trying to have high expectations for your child in terms of like her exposure to TV. That's a great thing. Like, there's no reason why that would harm her. So like there's no reason
Right.
you can't celebrate it. And I think sometimes when people like, if we feel threatened or feel like, oh, I'm not doing that, and deep down I know maybe my kids watch too much TV, like I'll just kind of say like, oh well, she's crazy. Like there's nothing wrong with TV, or but where's the line? So like I've always said, like, I'm always one who, instead of getting like jealous or competitive, like I get inspired. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's inspiring. Like I would love to be that amazing one day. And I was like that when my daughter was a baby. Unfortunately, that's gone out the window, unfortunately. But however, I know that it's like I would love for my children to watch less TV. That would
Right.
be amazing.
And it I will say it is harder. It's easier said than done, because I
Yeah,
have struggled with it a little bit.
right. Yeah.
And I didn't, and that actually I think surprised me a little bit. I think I thought that would be easier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another thing that a lot of people have an issue with is like YouTube. Like, oh, there's all sorts of horrible things on YouTube. And then, some people, I won't say names. I think they might watch this podcast. But, they'll be like, "Oh, whatever, YouTube's fine. Like there's nothing bad on YouTube." And then it's like, "Well, okay, you might think that, but say so and so's mom does think there's bad stuff on YouTube. So that's their right. They don't want their kids watching YouTube." Like end of story, like as the parent we do get the final say.
Right, right. And kids vary a lot too.
Yeah.
Um, like years ago, I had a patient, and she had come in with her two kids. I'm trying to think, they were maybe like 8, but they were pretty sensitive kids.
Hmm.
And Ferdinand the Bull, like the
Okay, yeah.
the the cartoon, the Disney cartoon.
Yeah.
And I know I watch Disney sometimes now.
No, yeah.
And that's just shockingly controversial too, but
Yeah,
but you know
it
what, that's a
really
great
is.
thing. Like everyone gets to have different opinions, and anyways, it's we make changes at the pace that we can, and
Exactly. Yeah,
that's totally okay. Like it
right.
doesn't you can recognize something isn't maybe the best, or there's certain issues, and still appreciate parts of it. And so I think it becomes dangerous, I think, for our mental health as well, if we push too hard in any direction,
Yeah, definitely.
like, and hold ourselves to too high of standards. Like, it's just we don't live in a perfect world, and we're human, and so it's
Yeah.
part of the human experience. But what was my point? So
That's
Ferdinand the Bull,
yeah.
the Disney cartoon, right? And I had been telling them, I was like, "Oh, I watched it. It was really cute, and I really liked it." And the mom had asked, she's like, "Is it scary?"
Mhm.
And I'm like going, "Okay, well, from an adult perspective, no, Ferdinand the Bull is not scary." And I'm
Mhm.
going, "But there is that one scene where it's like I don't know, like the meat processing plant or something.
Okay.
It's like a little ominous,
Mhm.
and anyways, it's like a little ominous." And I was like, "Well, like, it could, like, I would say for the most part, definitely not. There's some parts that I think some people and some kids could feel like are scary, especially if they're really young."
Mhm.
And then her son is like, "I watch Star Wars." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, no, it's not scary."
It's funny because yeah, it's funny. That's so funny. And it's like, well, you don't know, right? And it's like I've had issues with people like my babysitter or you know, showing my kids things that I did not approve of. And I like completely lost it. Like got really mad and like, oh my goodness, are they like forever ruined? Like there's this movie Wreck-It Ralph, which is
Oh, yeah.
very mature and like some of the scenes in there are very scary, like people without heads and like skeletons and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, like this is horrible." I cannot believe my children watch this. So I had
Yeah.
to have like a conversation with my babysitter about like really, we need to be screening what they watch and making sure it's
Mhm.
age appropriate and so that's the hard part about like letting other people take care of your kids. This is a very hard thing. It's like because you're not always fully in control of what they're exposed to. And of
Right.
course, I have like people think of my standard. I know I've been accused like of my parents and my babysitter of just being a little bit crazy sometimes. Because like I got mad at them singing "Ring Around the Rosie" when I was postpartum. I was like postpartum with Rashid, and I heard them singing "Ring Around the Rosie," and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what are they? That's an evil song, and what are they doing to my child?" And like, but it was really coming from a place of feeling because I was had a newborn and like I wasn't able to really be as present with my daughter because I had been at the hospital, and so I felt out of control in regards to her care, and so I like was becoming a bit crazy about things. So like I don't know,
Yeah.
it's a
I
hard,
think a little crazy is allowed postpartum.
yeah.
Like, I think culturally, we need to have just a little room for a little compassion for the postpartum crazies, just a little,
Looking
like,
back, I'm
and
like,
not like
"Where?"
actual mental health, but like
Right,
just
yeah, a little over the
like a
top.
little unreasonable.
Yeah, I
You
was
know?
definitely unreasonable with that. Like, looking back, I'm like, "Okay, it's just, it's just like a nursery rhyme." But for some
Right.
reason, that felt like a total threat on my like, parenting, was like the ring around the rosy. I've definitely eased up a bit as as my kids have gotten older, I've had no
Right.
choice. I think we've talked about this before, like, I've gotten a bit more relaxed because I trying to maintain, like, such a tight grip, it was giving me a lot of anxiety,
Well,
so
it's exhausting.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's and it kind of comes back to the self-care a little bit too, is that I think part of being able to be really present and to truly enjoy being present is to also have that space to take care of ourselves as parents. And I think especially as mothers, because again, not in every case, but usually especially in the early years, a lot of the burden
Mhm.
for like child face-to-face interactions and child care ends up on mothers,
Yeah.
in many cases more heavily.
Yeah.
And so it's again, how can we be super, super present if we're completely exhausted?
Right, or if we're just
You
filled
know?
with anxiety about
Right,
every
and then there's that too. So this brings up a thought. So I had a friend come and stay with us for, I don't know, like a weekend or something like that. And this was, my daughter would have been in the ballpark of 6 months, maybe just a little over 6 months.
Okay.
Um, and it was, she was kind of just starting to laugh, but she had literally never laughed with me before. She had laughed with my husband, but she had never laughed with me. Like she never really got like the giggles with me. Like
Yeah.
she'd smiled and obviously stuff like that, but she hadn't laughed. And
Mhm.
then this friend comes to town and, like really nice person. It was fun to see her. Um, she's pretty high energy, like she's a Leo and just lots of like fire and passion and she doesn't have kids of her own. But she's very like loves babies and she's like, guys, I'm the baby whisperer. Like all babies are so good with me and there's never issues. And was kind of like that. And my daughter would laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh when they were together, which was like, part of me was like, okay, this is so awesome. Like, this is so much fun.
Right.
And part of me was so dang jealous.
Right, yeah, it's crazy the jealousy that comes out as a mom, like, you wouldn't
and,
expect. I totally get it.
and I was really kind of surprised with myself. And I was like, okay, Andrew, I'm like, you have got to keep yourself in check because this is ultimately a good thing. Like, and
Yeah,
do you do, and it was like, my goodness, I'm like, I must be so boring. Like this person, she's like being all silly and all these faces
yeah.
and like so high energy. And a lot of the time we sit or we do things or we play or she sleeps or but like I don't hold her and like I like make crazy faces
And
with
also
her for an
as
hour on end.
I feel like as moms, like, I don't know if you felt the same, but I always felt like me and my kids almost had, like, an unspoken understanding. I don't know how to explain it, like,
Yeah.
a lot of times with my babies, like, I felt like we were just so connected, there wasn't even a lot of talking. And then so I experienced the same thing where I was like, "Oh, am I just boring?" Because like, I feel like we just have this, like, unspoken understanding of each other, but say with their babysitter, they're, like, having so much fun, and, like, I've experienced the same thing as you. So I don't know if you're the same where you felt like you guys have sort of like an
Um,
unspoken bond?
well, there's definitely a lot unspoken where it's kind of like I don't really like there's less need for talk. Though I
Yeah,
talk a lot, so I talk to her all day anyways.
right.
Mostly we sing. Like I've sang to her so much on certain days I've lost my voice.
Aw, cute.
and or we'll talk about things or I'll be like, I'm gonna go over here and do this and you
Right,
can see me and you can hear me and I'm still, like anyways, what like I'll do different things. I
yeah.
talk a lot, but
Yeah.
And half the time, I think my family, they're just like not even listening to me. They're just doing their own thing because they're like, Andrea, you just like, you never shut up.
That's funny. Oh.
So I was actually a lot like that as like before I went to kindergarten.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I was never like a loud kid. I
Mm.
just liked to share ideas and I didn't even care if anyone was listening. I just would like wander through the house talking
Yeah.
and I would talk out loud as I played and like tell
That's so
stories. And I
interesting.
kind of still do that a little bit. And it's probably come out more so
With
like spending time with her.
yeah.
Um, because it's all of a sudden, anyways, it probably comes out more with her
Yeah.
where it's like I'll just chat.
Right. I feel like I was like that when Chanel was a baby, but I think that for me, I'm like very, I mean, my kids, I talk to them because they have language, they can
Right.
talk their language and everything. So I must have talked, but I did feel like we sort of had like an unspoken bond. And even now, sometimes I'm so in my head that like I won't always answer people right away, and people get mad at me a lot. I don't know what it is. I'm just like very
Right.
much like in my head. And I'm like, I don't say a lot. I'm like my dad in that way. Like my dad's like a man of few words. Like I don't really talk too much if I don't have to.
Okay. So
Yeah.
podcast is a perfect thing for you
Well,
then.
yeah. No, well, the thing is I have an extroverted side of my personality too. So like I have a lot
I'm
to say.
I'm so just teasing you.
I really do have a lot to say, but like given the option
Yeah.
in my own peace and space, like I won't talk a lot. Like I don't talk a lot. Like I'm more just kind of in my restriction
Yeah.
kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And probably if I'm by myself, and it's not like I talk all day to my daughter. I don't talk while she's sleeping and
Right. Right.
sometimes she's playing and I'm doing my own thing and or different things like that too. So, but in general, I probably talk a lot. So, I
Yeah.
feel like she's been exposed to plenty of words.
Well, that's probably a good thing.
So, but I also do feel like there is still the connection of like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I know what she needs and or
Right.
this is what she wants or
Yeah.
or
I
it's like
really felt
she'll
that.
like stare at me and I'm like, okay, this kid can read my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I even felt like with nursing, like I felt like there was this like unspoken understanding. Like I always knew what they needed and like it was just sort of it wasn't so much talking. Yeah, I don't know. It was
yeah.
interesting. Like
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of that's biological. Like there's so much, especially again when they're little, but with like birth and pregnancy and those early years before there is a lot of language, there is this very like physical connection
yeah.
where and that I think is different. So my one teacher, she always said, she's like the thing about mothers is that you were once part of them. So there's this like
Mm,
biological connectedness. And then there is some research that has even shown like that we will carry bits of our children's DNA in us for forever. And so
that's
there's always this like there really is this like very biological connection. And I think anytime you spend so much time with someone and especially like very close or like skin on skin touching, there's just information that flows
yeah.
through that as well.
Mhm.
And that's do I have research to back that up? Not really. I'm assuming that feels true to me.
Feels true to me too. So
Right, and so there's just this like you get information like that, and so there is this element of it that other people aren't going to get, and in that I think it's the most comfortable, it's the most nurturing, it's the relationship that they most require, which
Mhm.
makes it a different kind of relationship.
Right. Yeah.
Like they don't necessarily have to giggle or perform or
Right. And that's
anything
how
like
I felt.
that.
Yeah. I felt like it kind of goes both ways. Like it's like we have an unspoken bond and love, that it's like I don't have to overly perform. They know, they can feel it. And I'm likewise. So
Right.
it's
Right.
interesting.
And I think slowing down and really like getting comfortable with that as well, of going like, this is such an important relationship, and it's so like, and like keeping the jealousy in check though, like
Yeah.
keeping like the overreaction or whatever in check within ourselves, and not saying, oh, they love me less because, but just like going, okay, like it's just a different type of relationship,
Yeah.
and like settling with that and saying like it's okay to just be very, very, very comfortable,
Right.
and enjoying that part of it too, because there's also a lot of pressure on us, like, again, with breastfeeding and stuff like that, it's a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
and it's something really no one else can do for you,
Yeah.
and but to really like settle into that too and say, this is a phase of life and this is important,
Mhm.
and will I enjoy every moment? No, and that's okay. And um she's crying downstairs a little
Oh
bit.
no.
um
I hear you. I can
she's
feel
she's
you
a
talking about me.
right, she's okay though. And I heard the water running, so someone went to go wash hands, or I don't know, maybe she got something on her, I don't know.
Oh,
And she doesn't always like that, but anyways, I diverge. Which again, it's like that's the very physiology part of it, of like feeling things even though you're like rooms away, or
yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? And like that your baby has taken over your brain. And
Oh.
but what was my point? But even just to find a way to slow down and really sink into that part of the experience too.
Mhm.
And
It's interesting because breastfeeding forces you to slow down.
yeah, well, it makes you sit like every, I don't know, hour, 90 minutes. At least at the beginning, I was like, I think sometimes I'd only go 45 minutes without.
Yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
like, I need a little more. I
Right.
had just a sip before, and now I need another sip. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It really does force you to slow down, which is interesting.
right, right. And it was, what was interesting was is that especially early on, it was, and interestingly, I felt no guilt about it while I was pregnant. I felt zero guilt about not getting anything done in a day.
Mhm.
Like, like if I had the opportunity, it's like I just didn't care.
Right.
But somehow once she was born, I felt like I'm not doing enough. Like I need to
Yeah.
be more productive and I'm not contributing. Is
Right.
literally what was going on in my head, was like I'm not or I'm contributing but I'm not contributing enough.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
had to really put myself in check for that too, because that made it so much harder to enjoy that early time with her, because I was feeling like, oh my God, like I'm just not doing enough. I'm not helping. Like
Yeah.
I'm not sharing my load, like in the house and in this family. And I had to really remind myself, like you're feeding her, you're holding her, you're rocking her to sleep, you're doing all of these things, which is of critical importance,
Yeah.
because she's of critical importance.
Right.
Like there's no larger investment that
Mhm.
we make as a human
Yeah.
into to grow and raise a really good little human being that becomes a wonderful and productive and inspired adult. Right. And um but I had to really put myself in check, because I'm going, this is keeping me from enjoying this, because I'm feeling really guilty about not doing enough,
Yeah.
or I'm feeling like, oh, I shouldn't hold her while she naps, I should go put her down while she naps, and then
Mm.
I can get stuff done.
Yeah.
And but then part of me was like, I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to. Like, this is the best feeling in the world. Like, if I'm being really honest with myself, this is the best thing in the world is to
Yeah.
get to hold her while she sleeps. And some days it's a little harder, but but it's like, I'm like, I just don't freaking care that there's dishes in the kitchen.
Right.
Like, I just don't care. Like, if I'm being really honest, like all this pressure is like not really from me.
Yeah.
It's like very external.
Right. And those are precious moments that you can't get back, when they're like so little and
Right.
they want to sleep on you and like yeah.
Right, and they're like the best movie you've ever seen because 'cause you're like,
Yeah.
"Wow, I could watch you.
Yeah.
I could watch you." Well, Dr. Caitlin had said something like that in, our previous one of our previous episodes for this season, and she had said, like, "I never used to get why people would just, like, sit there and watch children sleep," and she's like, "Now I get it. It's, like, wildly entertaining and and amazing, like, just to watch, like, the tiny little movements and the
Yeah.
little smile that comes out while they're dreaming," and
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was like, "Now this," I'm like, it's just interesting. So, there's definitely been a few times where I'm going, "You know what? Like, I I just need to let go of all of the societal expectations of how it's supposed to be, and these curated Instagrams of how it's supposed to look and how, you've got the little baby in a wrap and you're making these beautiful charcuterie boards and your children eat sushi and I'm conflating things, but and you're perfectly dressed and
Right.
you're milking the cow but in your full makeup and like you have a little baby but your hair is not like in a constant like unwashed scrunchie and
It's
and
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm like I lost my point, but go ahead.
Well, no, it's just you brought up an article that I read about this very thing about how like TikTok and Instagram influencers who are selling this idea of motherhood, but they really have like a whole team behind them. And
Right,
they literally have like they're selling themselves, but they are a product and they have like agencies behind them. They have like the camera crew, they have people watching their kids, they have hair and makeup. They have people doing their grocery shopping, planning, okay, you're gonna cook this. Like, and it was saying that we watch this as consumers thinking this is just a normal, like organic experience, but it's extremely curated. Now there are of course influencers who are more real and it's like, oh, this is just a day in the life, but a lot of them are actually like it's completely, I don't want to say fake, but like orchestrated. And then
right.
we
It's
watch
it's
that.
like a movie set.
Yeah, yeah. And then we
Yeah.
watch that and we're like, "Oh my goodness, like how come I am not like making like there's influencers out there like making Fruit Loops from scratch every morning or like, oh, I'm gonna make cinnamon toast crunch and they like go out and they have like they mill the flour. And then they like put it in, they milk the cow, and then they roll out like the little things and they cut up the cereal, they bake it, and then they like have, oh, their kids awake. Oh, here's your freshly baked cereal that I just made. Like it's like these crazy unrealistic standards. And
Right,
it's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't even like manage to make my children breakfast this morning or myself like and then there's people out here making it cereal from scratch, like it just sets like a very high standard.
right, and I mean, if people truly are making cereal from scratch and they somehow have the support to make that happen, I think that that's amazing because
Agreed.
it
Yeah.
like there's because again, I'll say like we've done pretty good for when she's been eating solids to do like everything homemade.
Right, yeah.
And again, with a second child or a third child or whatever, there's
Yeah,
different challenges that come with that.
definitely,
But
yeah.
I've said, okay, that we can find the energy to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
And we may not clean the shower, and it might get like pretty gross in there sometimes,
Right.
but she will get like home
Always
cooked,
food.
real
Yeah.
food that I know for the as best as we can manage it will not have been exposed to pesticides
Right. Yeah.
and isn't going to have like, like we'll know what's in it because we cooked the sweet potato
Right.
or
Right.
whatever,
Exactly.
right? Or like we mixed it together and we
Yeah.
so we have, but even that took us a while to get things together to like really start getting organized to do that
Yeah.
well.
It is
And
hard.
and then a lot of other things fall behind, through the cracks because
Right.
we're focusing on doing that. And so, right. And so I have so much admiration for the people who truly are managing to give their kids great food and who
Yeah.
are saying, I'm going to make the effort
Right.
and not do fast food because even though that's the most convenient,
Yeah.
and sometimes maybe that's necessary because,
Right.
fed is better than nothing. But again, it's like to really make the effort to go the
Yeah.
extra mile for the future health of
Yeah.
our children. Like I do really believe in that,
I completely agree.
and but not at the expense of our mental health either.
Right. And I think
You
the
know,
issue with it is that I think that that is possible to make everything from scratch and feed your kids real food. I think the issue is the way they orchestrate it, that it's like mom's awake before kids and doing this all in the morning. Like that to me is not realistic. Like maybe you can do like a meal prep Sunday where you can, someone's watching
right,
kids and you can make cereal from scratch if you want. But like,
right, or at least show the whole team that's making this happen for
right,
you.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. But I agree. I think it's so important to have like homemade food, but I don't
Right.
know that it's happening like at 5 in the morning. Well, for me, my kids are up at 5, so there's no way I'd be making breakfast before they're awake. Like it
Right,
just won't
right.
happen. I'm not waking up at 4. Okay, like I do need some sleep.
Right, right. So it's, and I wonder too, like for some of the moms who are attempting to emulate these very staged kinds of things, like I don't know how I think it depends. It's like, are you enjoying trying to do that? Like, is that exciting for you?
Oh
Does,
yeah,
like, because again, like if you really love to bake and that's
your
your
passion.
thing and you just love it and you're like
Yeah,
the early bird who's always gotten up at 4:30
then it works.
and you can make that work, then that's great. And
Yeah,
that I would say would still be a slowing down and enjoying motherhood because you're really
doing your passion.
pouring into yourself as well.
Right.
And and I think though exactly what you're saying is we see things that are unrealistic and go, wow, like what a cool thing. Like I love that idea. Like that's amazing. And then we feel like a total hot mess and failure when it doesn't work out because we woke up at 5, but then the kids woke up at 5.
Yeah.
And then you're like throwing their food on the floor, like go fetch. And while you're like, and then the flour explodes in the kitchen and someone knocks over water and all of a sudden you have glue. And
You frazzled and you're like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? Yeah.
and you may finally get it done after a very stressful day and then it's 11 p.m. and you're like, yes, breakfast is ready.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. I think that's where it comes in like support too, like having support so that if baking or working out or whatever it is your passion, like you have the space
Yeah.
and ability
Yeah,
to do
to
that. Yeah.
create that. And I think also recognizing seasons of life. Like
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
is going to look different in different seasons. And if you have a lot less support, it days may feel harder. And it may
Right.
be more of an issue of like, okay, you know what? That's just going to remain undone. And that's
Yeah.
okay. So
And
that I
but
can
also, yeah.
enjoy something.
Right. And I think it's important to recognize because it's funny we're having this conversation because I just thought this morning. Like, I was like, okay, I think I'm getting more into a season where I can focus more on like I'm making chicken broth upstairs.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's something I haven't done since I had Chanel as a baby. Like with two kids, like that sort of thing I love it. My passion is cooking. I love cooking from scratch,
Mhm.
and I haven't been able to do it because it's just been too chaotic. And this
Yeah.
morning I was like, I think I'm getting to a place where I can start to do this. And I realize that it's important and like I need to do this and I have the space to do it. But a year ago or even 6 months ago, like it wasn't the season. Like it was not feasible,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, and it's different because like again, like you're a single mom and there's just
Right.
you. And so you're trying to manage
Yeah.
everything. And that's
Yeah.
hard because I'm going like I don't cook with her. And
It's hard.
because she's underfoot and I worry that I drop something hot on her, or we
Yeah.
have made applesauce together. So we have
Yeah.
done, and that's only very recently
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she's been like happy enough to kind of play, and I've been able to peel the apples and then like get them on the stove without feeling like she's
Right. Or she's crying like, hey, pick
right, like it's worked out. And it wouldn't work every day, but it worked once or twice.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's like maybe we'll chop some vegetables in advance,
Mhm.
and then all the cooking happens when there's two of us at home.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how to do that on my own. I mean,
Yeah.
I could maybe figure it out, but I'm going, I would be so stressed. Like
Yeah.
that would not be fun.
Even worth it. Yeah.
Like it
And
would
that's
not be fun.
yeah, and it's kind of like
So
what the exchange. It's like, okay, is it worth it at this moment when it's like both kids are crying and like, what are you doing? Come sit with us, come play with us.
right.
And it's like, okay, I know I got to make this long meal and then I give it to them and they don't even like it. I've done that a few times and I'm like, okay, we're keeping it simple around here. Like,
Right. Right, right. It's like simple is good. No,
yeah,
it was not with kids, but I had made this like amazing dessert. Um, this was like years and years ago. I was like, I don't know, just past halfway through chiropractic school, and I'd been invited to this Super Bowl party.
yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna make this dessert. And so it was like, I don't know, it's some kind of wheat-based crust. I can't even remember, but like really yummy. And then I made homemade pistachio pudding,
Ooh, that sounds
which
delicious.
was delicious. And then like whipped cream, and then I like crumbled like nuts over the top of it. And
Mm.
there was like this whole dessert. And there's gonna be like 30 people there. So I made this massive pan of it.
Wow.
And because pistachios are green,
Yeah.
these people at this party, I think I was the only person who had a piece of it at the whole party. And everyone else is like, it's green. Is that avocado? Why did you put avocado in a dessert? I'm like, it's pistachio. I'm like, like the nut. Like,
Yeah. It's delicious.
I'm
Like,
like, it's absolutely delicious.
yeah.
And no one would eat it. And I was like so offended. I was so annoyed. And I was
Yeah,
like, I am not letting this go to waste. Are you kidding me? Like
right.
this took me a long time to make.
Right.
It's delicious. It was expensive because this is pistachios.
Yeah. Oh my
And
goodness.
so in 2 days, I ate the whole darn thing
I love it.
because I was like, I am not wasting this food.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like seriously. But no, it's really like to your point, like it can be very demoralizing when you put a lot of effort to make something like from scratch or whatever, and then like your kids don't like it or your guests don't like it. It's like, oh my goodness, like really.
Right, right.
And that was hard for me because I love cooking like that. And that's what's been hard about me from being like single because I don't necessarily like cooking just for myself. And my kids don't really like what I make. So I'm like, oh, this big part of my life that I love to do, cooking is
Right.
like,
Invite me over. I
yeah,
love to eat. No.
right, yeah. Well, you guys are coming. I'll try and
Yeah.
make you something nice. It's like, it's just
There's
been like,
really, really no pressure. I'm
but yeah, that's kind of just like been poof, like, and I'm kind of getting back into it. So
Right. Like kind of, yeah. And that's, I think, a great thing too. Like, and I think recognizing the seasons helps
Yeah,
us enjoy things too, to be like, this isn't forever. This
right.
is for now. And
We'll get back to it
we'll
when
get back to it. And right now, it may be a season of having a messier house. I don't love a messy
right,
house. And I don't know that it's worth the stress for me and for her
right.
to
Yeah,
like try and like keep it perfect.
yeah, yeah,
And so it's like, okay, this is a season where certain things are just going to like fall by the wayside, and I'll
yeah,
circle back.
yeah. That's been
And
really hard for me too, like with the cleanliness. Because I am very like, oh, I like things clean, and it's been really hard to let go. I keep my room clean because I need to have a clean space to
have
relax.
something.
But like when it comes to their room and like their toys and stuff, I've given up on being obsessed with constantly picking up after them because it's like, what's the point, you know?
Right. Well, and there is an element of that. I could put everything away every night,
Yeah,
and by 9:30 in the morning, it would all be back on the floor.
right. So
So
it's,
some nights we put it all away, some nights we don't.
yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's just like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But and yeah, and it's just interesting, like the slowing down to enjoy is sometimes like in our own minds. It's really a very internal
It
kind
is.
of a thing of like keeping ourselves in check and having our inner compassionate self come out and say, no, this is okay. And this is for now. And your need will get met later. And
Yeah,
like, it's okay to enjoy and, to keep ourselves from comparison. And,
yeah,
so it's a very, there's something to be said with being a parent of kind of of how like kids are like your little mirrors, and they bring up
yeah.
all these things that you need to work on and all these things you didn't know were an issue for you.
So true.
And where you get to reparent yourself, so to speak, not, and show up as like your little adult self and going, it's okay, it's
Yeah,
okay.
someone's got to do it.
Everything's all right. You're grumpy, that's okay.
It'll be, yeah, it's so funny. It's so interesting. It's like, yeah, our children are like our greatest teachers, like they say.
Right, that's a good way of saying it. But yeah, I love that. And I think learning to slow down, because there's something that's beautiful about this. If we get to learn it now, is then we always have more skills to enjoy life more, no matter what season we're in the
Mhm.
future.
Yeah.
Like, and I also believe that many people, especially in Western culture, and like in the US and Canada and different places, like busy is considered a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
there's so much that's considered good about being busy. Like if your life is too slow, if you're not rushing, well, maybe then you're lazy, or like there's this idea. And I think it's time to just like say goodbye to that
Yeah, I agree.
and say, you know what, I am embracing things being a little slower, so
Hmm.
that I can embrace when they're also busier. and,
Right.
and slower doesn't mean non-productive.
Right.
Like, and I think that that's something too. And I had actually read recently that overly busy is really a scarcity issue in regards to the resource of time.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm going, now that actually, I'm like, that hits home a little bit.
Yeah. Wow.
And so they're like, if you're overly busy and always rushing, it's a scarcity issue.
Yeah.
And where you never have enough time and you're packing too much in and you're
Right.
creating a scarcity issue because you believe you don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Anyways, was what the author was saying. Um,
Yeah.
and that may or may not be true for everyone, but I'm
I
going,
think
it's an interesting concept in any event.
that makes a lot of sense. I've also heard like being overly busy is like a trauma response or a way to like not necessarily feel.
Right. Yeah, actually I recognize that too.
Because
Yeah,
if you're just not busy and still, that's a lot of times when some of those like uncomfortable feelings come up.
right. Right. There's more time to think, there's more time to
Yeah.
feel. Your body's like, "Here, this is a great time. Come deal with this."
Right. Yeah. But if
I'm
we
opening
never,
up the junk drawers. No.
yeah. But it's like we kind of have to do that so that we can feel it and move on and or process it. And yeah, it's interesting because I lost my train of thought. I had a lot of thoughts going on and they just all
Okay.
kind of so mom brain
They
happened.
they do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh well. But yeah, no, I've loved this though. Like
Yeah.
just the reminder to slow down and to be present and to breathe and to allow space for our own self-care and our own process,
Mhm.
and for our children to have their own process,
Yeah.
and just to have some fun,
Right. Yeah.
and like just like lean into that enjoyment.
Yeah, because I mean, if we're actually doing ourselves and our children a favor, it may seem like we're being unproductive, but we're calming our nervous system and our children's
Right.
nervous system, and there's a lot of benefits to that.
Right. Well, we're raising more regulated children who become more regulated adults, and we're more regulated, which is ultimately going to be a good thing for everyone.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, this has been a good topic. I like
Yeah,
this.
I like
Yeah,
it
this was we came in really not planned, but I think
too. We had a lot to
we
say.
had good thoughts. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for jumping into the Hen House with us again today, and for joining us on this journey of season 2. And we will see you all soon.